right, we are live on the YouTubes. Start the audio recording. Audio is recording. And cue music. It stopped. Audio as soon as I did that. Start over, folks. I'm gonna turn the music down just a hair or two there. Alright, so I gotta restart the audio recording. I'll learn how to do this, I promise. Alright, start the audio, switch screens. We are the Common American, recorded live from Texas on February 15th, 2016, President's Day. This is episode 1 of the Common American. This is the inaugural show, and I wanted to have my co-host ready, but sadly, David Williams is not quite ready yet. His internet connection is still not hooked up. I'll leave it at that. In any case, I do have a co-host, I promise, but we're going to get there. We'll get him going with me here, and I felt it was important to get a start because it's President's Day. And we're in the midst of a hotly contested American presidential election cycle. We've got the primaries going on in America right now, and it's getting pretty interesting, and I think it's important to talk about it. This show is going to be a little bit less of the discussional show that I want to do normally and more of a political instructional show, sort of, because I do feel that the average common American maybe isn't as educated about their own political system as they should be, and even about their own candidates. And this is going to give you a start. It's going to give you an idea how the American election process really works, and I hope I don't bore you to tears, but I think you're going to enjoy some of this information. So this isn't a political show. It can be about anything. It can be about everything that affects the common American. It could be in an election cycle, like currently, and probably will be, about politics. However, we're going to talk about everything: school shootings, police shootings, crime, the Pope, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever affects you in your daily lives and affects me and affects others like us. And it doesn't matter if you are, if you're white, if you're black, if you're Mexican, if you're whatever. We're here to discuss. We don't care if you're homosexual or straight. We don't care if you like bestiality. That's, hey, the co-host nickname, David Williams, goes by Beast Mode. I'm not going to make any speculation as to what that means, although he does have children, so I don't think it's too weird. Anyhow, again, it could be anything. Talk about the Catholic Church. We may talk about our own dogs and our own kids. It's a show about anything and everything that affects the common American. And most importantly, it's about you. You are the driving force, the strength, the valor of this great nation. From the man working 60 to 80 hours a week to support his family, the single mother who puts everything she has into being everyone to everything, or everything to everyone, however you want to put that. The doctor who spent, or the lawyer who spent a quarter of his life to learn how to help people only to be vilified for it. So it's not just a blue-collar guy. It's everybody. Everybody who lives and works and pays taxes in this country. The married, the single, the straight, the gay, the white, the black, the red, the white, and the blue. You are the common American, and we will join you together and talk together as one. We must stop bickering and start talking, debating, and working together to make this country great. To that end, we need to educate ourselves. We need to begin to learn. I am amongst the many who voted in years past without truly having all the information. I voted with the limited amount of information I was able to gather from the news media. Well, there's a And that's just from watching television. That's not from reading news stories. That's not from gathering data. And that's not how I live the rest of my life. I'm a technology guy. I love gadgets and doohickeys. And I educate myself about anything and everything I'm going to buy. If I'm going to buy a new TV, I'm going to try to get the best possible. I want 120 hertz capability, 4K, UHD. If I can afford it, I'm going to get the best TV I can buy, and I'm going to research that TV ad nauseum. But I don't do that to pick my political candidate. Something's wrong there. And that's something that's wrong, not just with me, but with America. So I need to help myself. I aim to help myself, but in that, I want to help you. I want to help the common American because, like I said, not everybody educates themselves as they should, myself included. So, to this end, the first thing I want to discuss is understanding how the primary process works, because right now that's where we're at. We're in the middle of the primary process. I think the common American doesn't really understand that process. I know I didn't. Up until a few weeks ago, I literally was talking about doing this podcast with a friend and said, I don't really understand what a caucus is. I don't understand how that process works. So I did a little research. And in my show notes on commonamerican.com, once I get the show notes put up, you will find a link to a website I found that does a pretty good job of explaining in a nonpartisan way how a primary works and a caucus works. It's all actually a part of the primary selection process. The overall process to choose an individual by the parties, narrowing down to a single primary candidate that party overall will support. Now, does that mean you can't vote for someone else? No. That is the selection process by the party as a whole, going state by state until a single candidate per party has the majority of support from that given party. Now, in most states, they actually hold primary elections, ballot-style elections, using either the mail or, more recently, actually using online ballots. Although that's a little bit more difficult to do because, as we'll discuss a little bit later on, the internet is not regional. The internet is worldwide. Beyond worldwide, it reaches into space. We have astronauts that sit and surf the internet all day long. Astronauts, cosmonauts, and whatever you call Chinese astronauts that go up there as well. So, or is it China? I'm not sure. I'll be completely honest. I'm not that educated as far as who's in the space station. I know that there were parts built from all over the world put in the space station, and it was a joint effort. But again, coming back to the subject at hand, we're talking about the politics, the process of selecting the candidates in a primary election. It's selecting the choice for your party. Every state does it, honestly, a little bit differently. The most common general way is a primary election. Like I said, either ballots or online or email choice by registered voters for a particular party selecting their candidate for that state. The older way to do it was a caucus, where you would travel to a polling place, a centralized polling place. Sometimes it was the county seat, sometimes it's the state capital. More commonly, it's a local city location, like your city hall, something like that, where you all join together. That's a caucus, because you're caucusing. You're joining together for the purpose of choosing a candidate. That is, like I said, the older way, and it's far more difficult to get an accurate assessment. But there are still a few states that do it, Iowa among them, and that is what a caucus is. A caucus is just another form of primary selection, but it's the older way of doing it. Now, there are a multitude of types of both caucus and primaries. So it can be broken down to a granular, if I can get that word out, granular level. And I'll post a link in the show notes, that link to that website. It's on a website called diffin.com, which I think it's sort of a definitions-based website, but it's got a really good breakdown and an explanation of what these different types of caucuses and primaries actually are. And it's kind of cool when you start reading this stuff. And if you take the time to research, as I have in the past couple of weeks, you learn a lot. It's very neat, very cool information. Moving on to the next thing I kind of want to discuss, now that I've kind of broke down what a caucus is and what a primary is, we kind of need to talk about a couple of the stories in the news that help us to understand what's going on. One of the newest sort of ways to campaign, the newest breakdown of how the candidates, the newest sort of method the candidates are using to campaign is online. It was reported by Jason Heiner of Tech Republic in his article, Is Tech Breaking the 2016 Election? The candidates are really using the internet to gain momentum, but not the way most of us would think, and probably not the way most of us would prefer if we really think about it. I preface this by saying, before I get into this, I want to explain something. Those things people post on Facebook every so often? I hereby refuse the right for Facebook to share my information with advertisers and so forth and so on. Better safe than sorry. It's a really long rant against Facebook's terms and conditions. And I'll say that, first of all, if you post that on Facebook, you're doing nothing. You are literally doing nothing. The fact you use Facebook, period, means that you agree to their terms and conditions. There is only one thing you can do to keep Facebook from gathering your aggregate data and sharing it with their advertisers. That is to leave Facebook. That's the only solution. And even then, your profile isn't completely deleted for a period of time. I forget what that is. You have the ability to reactivate your profile, which means it's still sitting there somewhere. All your preferences, likes, and dislikes are sitting in a database somewhere because you created a Facebook profile. Same thing with Google. Google's not doing anything different. In fact, they scan your emails. You don't want to hear that, though, do you? It's free, folks. That's how they make their money. They have to make money somehow. The product itself that you are using is free. So guess what? You're the product. It's true. It's scary for some people, but you are the product. Well, that's true in the new political landscape as well. These political parties are purchasing this aggregate data from the Googles, the Facebooks, the Twitters, about the things that you're sharing and tweeting and emailing about. That helps them target you because they will sit down and they will write you a letter that looks like it was handwritten especially for you. No, it's pretty close because they have a multitude of these form letters that are written based upon an individual subset of general tendencies that are accumulated by aggregate data from big data, from the Google, from the Facebooks. So they are selling you. They are telling you what you want to hear. That's only going to get more and more invasive with time. In fact, it's gotten a little worse with Windows 10. Windows 10 shares information with Microsoft every time you go to a website, and there's really no way to turn it off. Now, this isn't a technology podcast, and that stuff scares some people, and I advise you to look into podcasts like the Daily Tech News Show, Security Now. There's a lot of podcasts out there that teach people how to be safe online, how to secure your data. Everything you do is being watched and analyzed on the internet. The data is exactly what the candidates use to appeal to your desires and to say what you want to hear. It's why Trump and Hillary did so poorly in Iowa. The other candidates, quite frankly, outspent them. Especially, let's see here. Let's see. I'm sorry, I lost my place. Dang it. At least I can edit this down in the audio version. The video version, you get to see me go, whoops. In the audio version, I'll edit this out. I got to see something real quick here, though. This is not... Yeah, it's still recording. Good. All right, let's get back to my place in the dock. I got to figure out how Tom Merritt keeps a flow going with this dock because I can get lost in it really easily. It's why Trump and Hillary did so poorly in Iowa. Bernie Sanders and Marco Rubio led the pack in spending on aggregate data during that period of time. Since then, they've picked it back up. Trump is back on top because he stepped up his spending. He almost tripled his spending on aggregate data collection and letter communication, email communications with registered voters. He tripled his gross expenditure moving into New Hampshire, and it shows. That's really what it comes down to, is reaching the average voter. If you can reach those voters and you can send them a letter or an email saying, I'm going to do exactly what you want me to do because Facebook told me this is what you want me to do. This is what I'm going to say because it's what you want me to hear. That's how they campaign to you nowadays. It's easier than getting face-to-face, and it's more accurate. I can walk up to a random person and kiss their baby and tell them I'm going to get their paychecks higher. But I don't know that that's what they really want, and they might be afraid I just gave their baby cooties. If I could just send them a letter saying, yeah, I understand that you're one of the thousands of people who have lost their job this year. Well, I'm going to increase unemployment spending. Well, that sounds great to me, Donald Trump. Guess what? I'm going to vote for you. I need jobs. I need a job. Well, Donald Trump comes out and says, I'm going to be the greatest jobs president in history. Well, great, Donald Trump. I think I'll vote for you. But how true is that? In the end, you don't know what they're going to do. They're saying what you want to hear. It's the process. It's what they want you to hear. So, and there's one last item that I want to bring up here. Unfortunately, sadly, this last week, we lost a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States of America, a great man who worked hard and made his way to where he was, Justice Antoninus Scalia. He was known as a staunch conservative and his stick-to-the-guns mentality, pun intended. He was a hunter, and what he was doing on the last day of his life was out hunting. Or he's at a ranch for the purpose of hunting. I don't know if he was actually hunting that day, but he was at a ranch in Texas for the purpose of hunting. Now, I'm not going to mince words here. I'm going to tell you that I'm a moderate Republican because I think you can't listen to me and know where I stand on a subject without knowing a little bit about me. The show is intended to be as bipartisan as possible given my own, affiliations, but I'll tell you that I don't vote along party lines either direction. Well, and again, I don't vote along those party lines in either direction. He was a proponent. Justice Scalia was a proponent of personal estate rights and felt that campaign finance reform of any kind stepped on the toes of the political system by infringing on First Amendment rights. The problem with that is, and even from a Republican standpoint, from a conservative standpoint, I'll tell you right now, I am tired. as the rest of America is of the corruption, of the bought and paid for mentality of the Washington elitists. It's why Rubio's a little bit more attractive to me personally, and I'm going to tell you, right at the moment, he's the most attractive to me. Well, he's a pretty looking guy, I guess, but not physically attractive. The most attractive candidate. Yeah, Hillary ain't that good looking. Sorry, I had to go there, didn't I? Anyhow, I'll probably delete that from the actual show so that it doesn't go on the podcast. He was a proponent of state rights, but he was an opponent of campaign finance reform. His resolve was absolutely unwavering in it, even amidst some bipartisan agreement that the super PAC system has become a political buy-off scam. With the most of that coming from the Democratic side of the aisle. And in fact, and the fact that President Obama will most likely at least attempt to appoint a replacement, there's a thin chance that a newly formed Supreme Court could review and overturn the previous rulings on various cases involving campaign finance reform. Or, if a new case is brought, we could see an overall change in the way campaigns are run. We can only hope. It won't change anything between now and November, sadly. But it's one amongst many reasons that nominating a Supreme Court justice at the end of a tumultuous presidency in its lame duck year will be an interesting mix moving forward. And it's something to keep your eye on, because this political race is already stacking up to be one of the most interesting races I've seen in a while. Because here's what I'll tell you right now. Looking at the presidential election standards, and remember, I told you I'm leaning towards Rubio, but if I'm being completely honest with you and myself, I have no idea. I have no idea who I'm going to vote for. I really don't. If I was asked by a family member here recently, if I had to choose between the available given candidates, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, or otherwise, what I would do right now, I'd probably put the pen down and walk away. Partially because I don't have enough information, but also because not a single one of them are either qualified, dignified, or purified enough for me to vote for them. That same family member said something to the effect of, but Hillary Clinton seems to be the most qualified. Maybe. But she's proven time and time again she's very difficult to trust. And this same individual didn't seem to understand why I was so upset about the server thing, about the email server, and I'm still hung up on it. Why are you still hung up on that? Why does it bother you so much? Because she's been in and around public office 90% of her adult life. She was the First Lady of the United States of America. You cannot tell me in that position that she did not understand the necessity for secure communications, that she didn't understand that presidential communications and government communications had to go through secured communications lines. Secondary to that, as a person who understands technology, I understand how difficult it is to maintain a secure server, and you can't do that adequately with a closet server. I've got a server in my closet. I'm not running email servers on it because that's actually one of the harder things to maintain. Maintaining an active POP server, maintaining an Exchange server, keeping the patches up to date, keeping the software working properly, keeping your IP address off of blacklists, things like that. It's It's hard work. It's active hard work. You send one incorrect email, if you've got a static IP, you send one incorrect email to the wrong IP address, to the wrong email address, and they report you as a spammer, they blacklist your IP, and then 25% of your emails bounce back to you. That's just the fact of how email aggregation works. And not only that, email, because it's one of the oldest communication technologies still used on the internet, is extremely vulnerable. The only way to adequately protect email is end-to-end encryption, which is why it has to go through government servers. If you understand technology, you understand that encryption is only as good as the sending and the receiving end of the encryption chain. End-to-end encryption. That is the only way to have a completely secure email, which means that the sender encrypts it and the receiver decrypts it, which means anybody in between can't read it. Because anybody honestly can capture an SMTP communication string and see the text. You can hook up something that used to be called Wireshark. It's been renamed, but it's a program called Wireshark. You can hook that up to any computer that is running an email client and sending emails out. And most of the data comes across in ASCII characters, strange, weird characters, because it's being communicated in code. Email is not. When you send an email, that email is encoded in SMTP, which is plain text. If you hook this program up, if you put this program on a laptop, you put that laptop in a pass-through mode with two Ethernet cables, one coming in, one going out, and you run Wireshark in the middle of that connection, you can see the text of every single email. Verbatim. That's how insecure email is. And the only way to change that is to encrypt it end-to-end, meaning it converts all of those words into gibberish based on a key of some kind. And the only way to change all those words from gibberish back to readable text is to have the key on the other end. That's end-to-end encryption. In a nutshell, that's the layman's way of explaining encryption. It's, you know, if you've ever watched National Treasure and they talk about a cipher, in technical terms, that's encryption. A cipher is encryption. You're taking the words, the letters, the numbers, and you're jumbling them up. Now, it's far more complicated than any word cipher. It's hashed and salted, meaning that not only is the encryption key involved, so, you know, A means ampersand, but then ampersand, instead of being an ampersand, it's salted as a number 1. So A means ampersand means 1. So all that's a complicated way to say that you would really need to understand the code behind the encryption before you could decrypt it. And even if you understood the code behind the encryption to decrypt it, you have to have the key. So at the end of the day, decrypting an encrypted communication is extremely difficult. And the funny thing is, you can go out today and buy your own encryption software. You can actually get it for free. There's a couple of encryption programs out there that right now off the top of my head escape me because I didn't prepare this part of the show like I should have because I'm a little short. The show's actually going a little shorter than I expected here. I went through my 3 stories a little faster than I expected, and because I don't have a discussion point, I don't have the ability to fall back on that to fill time. So basically I'm filling time with information about technology, because the Hillary Clinton email thing, even if you forget about Benghazi, you need to understand that technology is the most dangerous thing we have right now. Period. Technology can be used to bring down a country. And if you don't think it's possible, Think about the power outages that happened in the late 90s where half the eastern seaboard went down. Now, I'm no I'm no tinfoil hat wearing, conspiracy theorist, but I find it hard to believe that some massive failure brought down most of the East Coast. I actually think that was an orchestrated attack. Now, again, I'm being a bit of a conspiracy theorist with that, and I'm not a tinfoil guy, but it's possible. China could hack into American infrastructure and bring down half the country in an instant. Technology is dangerous, and if we don't learn to protect ourselves, both as a society but as a government, we doom ourselves to a fate like history. You see when countries fail to protect themselves from the threat of the era that they fail. It's why Greece fell. It's why many great nations prior to them failed. And it can cause America to fail. So we need to come together on this. You need to understand how to protect yourself. Now, to that end, I want to talk about the weekly cool thing. So I don't have an audio for that just yet. I'm trying to find some decent audio so I can say the weekly cool thing and play something cool, some sound effect. This is from my email.
Tell me I'm wrong.
Tell me I'm wrong. Anyhow, I don't have a sound effect for that yet, but the cool thing I want to talk to you about this week is something called LastPass. LastPass, and again, this is not an advertisement. I want to talk to you about LastPass because it's one of many possible ways to protect yourself, and it actually makes things pretty convenient for you. Do you have a lot of passwords? Do you have a lot of information that you are tired of trying to put in different places? You get to work, you jump on your computer at work, and you say, oh man, I got to check the bank real quick. Oh wow, I don't know that password. Well, I guess I got to wait till I get home. Well, LastPass is a password locker, more or less, but it's not just a password locker. As soon as you install LastPass on a PC, if you've got Chrome on it, it automatically links into Chrome and grabs all your passwords out of Chrome. Now that should scare you right there because it can log into Chrome and it can just grab those passwords and it can see them. And it can tell you, if you click on Show Password within LastPass, it'll show you what those passwords are. Now, there is no other program that can do that to LastPass because LastPass is encrypted and they don't have the key. That's the important part. LastPass has no access to your data. Your locker is encrypted and protected from everyone. You create a password locker, and the great thing about it is LastPass is available on iPads, on iOS, Android, PC, and I believe it's available on Windows Phone now too. It's awesome because I can create my password for the bank at home. I can't remember it. I pull out my Android phone, I pull up LastPass, and I hit a couple of buttons, and it shows me what my password is. I click Show Password. It opens it up so I can see it. And then on my computer at work, I type my password in. Now, here's the next step to that, though. Are you using the same dang password everywhere because it's hard to remember 15 different passwords? LastPass creates passwords for you. Now, it's not the only password locker software out there. Don't get me wrong. I do think it's the best. I think it's because of its abilities, and you can turn on, I always, and I'll go into this in a little bit later too, but you should always use two-factor authentication, and you need to Google what two-factor authentication is because it allows you to have multiple methods required to log into anything you have. Identity theft is a big deal. And if it ever happens to you, you'll agree with me. If it's ever happened to you, you will agree with me. You need two-factor authentication turned on everything that allows it. Period. But in addition to that, you need hard-to-figure-out passwords. And LastPass generates passwords for you and then saves them in your locker. So not only do you have to not have to think up and remember complicated passwords, you don't even have to generate them. You don't have to save them. You don't have to worry about writing them down somewhere. You've got something that you can pull up. The only password you ever have to remember from that point forward is the password for LastPass. Now, the kicker on that is now you've got a single point of failure. LastPass. If somebody can figure out your LastPass password, they can grab all your passwords. It's never happened, but it's possible. So that's why you use two-factor authentication. It allows you to have two different methods for logging in to LastPass. It's not just log in and go. Usually it's log in and it sends you a text message with a code, then you put the code in. And then you can get into your password vault. It's more complicated, it's a pain in the butt, but you've got a highly secure system locking up all your passwords, encrypted. The only person who can see them is you, and all of those passwords are really complicated, crazy passwords. Letters and numbers and spaces and exclamation points, you name it. And the awesome thing about it is, if you've got some website like your bank, who oftentimes they've got a different password convention than everybody else, you just tell that convention to LastPass and it creates a password that conforms to it. In other words, a lot of bank websites will be like, oh, you don't need just a capital letter and a number. You need a capital letter and a number and a character. So you need an @ symbol or a pound sign or an exclamation point somewhere in there, and it's got to be 14 characters long. Well, you can tell all that to LastPass. I think it's up to 20 characters it can generate in a password. Yeah, it's a password you don't ever want to try to remember. Believe me. I can't use it for work, and in most cases, neither can you, unfortunately. In a way, you can. You could use the LastPass locker to create a password for work, but then you have to look at your phone every time to figure out, okay, this is 14-character password. I got to hold my phone here. Okay, I'm logged in. If you log into a lot of stuff at work like I do, it doesn't work that well. But that's my cool thing of the week. Now, we want to talk to you about, that's the cool thing of the week. So we need you to send your suggestions, your feedback, whatever you think about the show to feedback@commonamerican.com. So if you think I'm wrong,
tell me I'm wrong.
Tell me I'm wrong. If you think I'm right, okay, it doesn't give me much to argue with you about on the podcast, but sure, tell me I'm right. But the other thing I've got is a phone number. So you got our email address, feedback@commonamerican.com. I've got a phone number from a previous podcast called Tell Me I'm Wrong. That's where I got the audio clip from. Well, that and a guy named Ray Scott. Thanks, Ray. Anyhow, the phone number is 512-82-WRONG.
Tell me I'm wrong.
I love that. I don't know why. It's just fun to play with. If you think we're wrong or if you just want to hear your voice, give us a call. It's 512-829-7664 and catch the show live. We're going to be recording moving forward. The plan is to record on Saturdays around 10 or 11. Eventually, once I get good at curating the show, it will be 10 o'clock. It will be 10 o'clock every Saturday morning because over the course of the week, I'll curate things and put them together and have the show ready to go. That's the idea. So we need you to support us too, though. If you go to you go to commonamerican.com, man, I got to make sure I don't do that. If you go to commonamerican.com, you can figure out how to support us. It's got everything there. You can listen to these podcasts. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. You can subscribe to us on your favorite Pocket Cast type podcatcher device. I use Pocket Cast. We are going to be on the Android Play Store once they do start putting out podcasts on the Android Play Store. So we're on iTunes. We are on SoundCloud. We are on the YouTubes. You can figure out how to support us on our Patreon there. And that, I want to tell you, I don't want to beg for support. If the show gets popular, I want it to be because you love it. And if you love it, give me a buck. That's all I ask for. Literally $1. $1 a month is not going to hurt your ability to buy a coffee. Doesn't even hurt your ability to buy one of these plastic bottles of water. So if you're willing to, kick us a buck, support us. Until next time, thank you for listening to The Common American.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Common American Podcast. To find out more about our show, go to www.commonamerican.com. You can get in touch with us, email us, call us, tweet us, support us, and berate us from the various links there. Common American is an independent production. Remember, support your independent artists and content creators.
And the recording is stopped. Thank you, YouTubes. If you've been watching or listening, peace out.